Good evening. Welcome in Pakhuis de Zwijger. My name is Servas and this is a very special program on the reconstruction of Ukraine. And for the people here in the audience, we both have people at home watching together with us, watching the stream, and people here in Pakhuis de Zwijger joining us for the conversation. For the people here in Pakhuis, welcome. Thank you for being here. You're more than welcome to participate later in the evening. I will go around with my microphone, and for the people at home, unfortunately, you can only watch, but that's still good and interesting, I think, because we're going to talk about about Ukraine, about the reconstruction of Ukraine. And I know the war is still going on. Actually, this week, it's 10 years ago that the Russian aggression in Ukraine started, and it's 2 years ago that the full-scale invasion of the country started. So it's kind of early, or it's actually far too early to start talking about reconstruction, but still we're going to do it. And we're going to talk with architects, with designers and other thinkers from the Netherlands and Ukraine on how the Netherlands and other fellow European countries can help with reconstruction, what is needed in Ukraine, but also how we're going to look forward to reconstruction and how it would look like. There are people coming in right now. Welcome, please take a seat. There are still some seats over there. As you can see, there are actually people here. Please join us next time if you want to in Pakhuis de Zwijger. On the zwijger.nl you can find the whole program on the agenda for all the programs here in Pakhuis, and there are all plenty of English language programs. So feel free to join us, and they're all free of charge, as always. Anyway, can I have a big round of applause for these people? Patrick Meijer, Alexandra Tchukenko, Julia Sorachuk, Westerveld, and Lilith Breddels. Big round of applause, please. And you're all, I'll start with you, Julia. You're a research fellow at EU and Global Affairs at the Klingendahl Institute. Next to you is Alexandra, you're urban planner at Kuip & Compagnons. Above here is Patrick Meijer, architect partner by Orange Architect. And next to you is Lilith Breddels, director archist and member of the Urban Coalition for Ukraine. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'll start with you, Julia, because I'm going to talk with you first, and then we go in depth on the broader topic, and we're going to talk with the rest of the audience who are here in Pakhuis today. Julia, as I said, you are a research fellow EU and Global Affairs at the Klingendahl Institute, and Klingendahl is an international or Dutch think tank in The Hague focused on international affairs and defense in a broader sense. I said we're going to talk about the reconstruction of Ukraine. That's the whole evening we're going to talk about. But it's quite early to start talking about it, or isn't it?
Well, no, certainly not, because the planning for the reconstruction, to organize the whole process, it takes a while. Mm-hmm. And except for, because I'm a bit from a different sector than the other speakers, and except for a physical rebuilding of infrastructure and civilian buildings, for example, there is also a recovery of economy of Ukraine. There is also a reforming process in order to enable this physical rebuilding in order to start the rebuilding process, but a planning strategy that takes approaches like the book I just checked out a few minutes ago. It takes years in order to develop that to enable financing.
Yeah, Lilith brought a book with her. We're going to look at that book later on, of these books. But so your fellow, your research is focused on post-war reconstruction. And so what kind of research did you do? What kind of reconstruction did you study?
Yeah, so mostly I focus on the economic aspects, financial and governance aspects of reconstruction. So also in the case of Ukraine, how to fund it, finance it, how different stakeholders like European Union and other countries can contribute to that, and like how to organize the process in terms of whether it should be coordinated through from the national level or a local level, because in Ukraine there is really big difference between the regions that have been the level of damage and the priority that needs to be assigned to certain projects. Yes. So that's the idea, how to basically get the country's economy up and running. Yeah.
So, but to bring it back, even though the war is still going on, unfortunately, there's a good chance it's going to take a while longer. So it's very difficult to think about the full scale of reconstruction because it's not over yet. But still, we have to start planning because you have to build coalitions. You have to make sure that people are behind you and start with this broader process that's much farther than just bricks.
Right. So you really need to know to see quite clearly what the result that you want to achieve. Are you going for a sustainable for like often the opportunity damage from the destruction like this one is an opportunity to rebuild in a substantially different way to make it to make the cities sustainable green and to use all the innovations that have been developed in different countries. But on the other hand, you may want to make a quick fixes in order to bring the population back because someone has to rebuild. This is one of the challenges for Ukraine now, is that through mining, demining activities in the cities, it's not always possible to start the reconstruction process right away. You need people to plan it, to design it. Yep.
Yeah, so it's not just rebuilding of what was there, but thinking about how it should be or how you want it to be. And could you, if you look to the future, so could you give us more details? Because there are a lot of questions that needed to be answered. Of course, you need to think about what the position is going to be of Ukraine, for example, the connection with the European Union, the membership of the European Union, what that will bring with it. So how should we look to this process, and what can we as fellow Europeans, what should we do to help?
Right. So if we look at from the context of the European integration, at what does that mean for Ukraine's recovery? I think there are a few aspects that are important to highlight. First, we already seen this is the prospect of European integration has worked as a powerful push for internal transformations of Ukrainian society and institutions as well. The funds that are now being allocated, these 50 billions that were recently voted for by the European Council and will be allocated for the next 5 years for reconstruction of Ukraine, that's also an important actor. But then what's still the biggest challenge for Ukraine now is to fund the projects that are already developed, so to find financing. And for that, international investments are needed. But for the international, for companies from abroad or for banks to invest in Ukraine, they need a kind of war assurance that, in order to recover at least part of their funds if the damage will be made for those projects. And that's something European Union is trying to partly ensure, but also World Bank and IMF. So this is, if you ask Ukrainian government institution, that's going to be the priority number one for them, to ensure this international investments and how to manage the insurance. Then a second.
Before you go to the second, so the thing is, it's not just finance from government, but you want to get finance for the public sector, and for that you need support from government to make sure that there's some kind of an insurance on the long term.
That's finance of the public sector. It's budgetary support. Yeah. That's what we call. So that's not really. You're not building anything new, but just keeping the capacity, the government capacity, going.
So that trains can go running, hospitals can keep working.
Yes,
these kind
exactly.
Of things. Okay.
Right.
And the other thing we were talking about is a long-scale reconstruction, and then there's actually post-war reconstruction. Two different kinds of topics.
Yes, but some of the projects are starting already now, and then the companies will not. It's a high risk, right? You can something which you're building can be bombed next day.
Of course.
So for that, in order to attract and stimulate those investments, public institutions are offering to cover part of the insurance for them.
Okay, I see. Now I understand. And the second part was. So you wanted to continue, so
right. The second part...
Sorry about that.
Well, I guess I wanted to talk about so I'm really much looking this economic perspective, and I'm sorry, I realizing that probably most of the audience is interested more in the urban aspect, and like we'll get to that. So the second part is the fabric of the society and how it is. Why is it important? It's like usually you would say maybe it's not relevant for the reconstruction, but the level of education and educational reform and access to healthcare is really important, because in these 2 years what we've seen is the usually Ukrainian population is the professional level and high skilled compared to some other regions, and in the past 2 years there have been a gap in access to education, and that is something what will be very much what Ukraine will feel when trying to mobilize human resources, a productive force on the long term to rebuild.
So reconstruction is in lots of aspects. It's about building railways, building highways, building cities. But in the end, of course, you do it for the people, and then it's the real life human cost of life lost, but also the real life human cost of opportunity lost in education, in experiences and on the job. These are all things you have to replenish and have to look at. You brought some pictures with you. Why did you want to show these?
Well, this is the Danube river fleet that is being now modernized by Ukraine. It's a kind of illustration of how Ukraine tries to rebuild its economy. This river float is used to export grain and other agricultural products to the European Union, because the Black Sea route is not available anymore. And what they are doing, they're not. So those ships are like 40 years old, approximately, quite old for the standards. And they try to put solar panels on top and really, use the best of technology and the resources they have in order to optimize and make it cheaper and efficient. So that's an illustration. I guess I wanted to tell a bit different story, what I was planning, and that would show how quickly and creatively Ukrainians try to adapt to the situation. Well, this is an illustration of how Ukraine facility works. So that's this 50 million. Not sure if I should go into the detail about it right now, but it's about the funding, and maybe can explain it later, and we can bring back the picture.
It's still there. You
There's
can always
time.
bring it back. So,
Right.
but if you look at the reconstruction, at the whole massive endeavor that has to start already now, even before the end of the war. So, what is the biggest task we have to start? What is the biggest, if you look at the economy, but also the human cost? So, it's the main focus we have to focus on right now.
So I see actually a tension between two things that needs to be done simultaneously.
Yeah.
First is a kind of emergency relief. So shelter for people and to get them to a warm, safe place. And that's something where a lot of resources within Ukraine are going to. And the second is a strategy, is a development of a framework of conditions, how to organize reconstruction, but what do you want to see, not on paper, but to make plans. And this is something that Ukrainian authorities don't have. They have restrained capacity to do that, and I think in that sense, that's something that is easier to do outside Ukraine, and the initiatives such as UN and the Rosquit are because of that they're really valuable, because there is time to think about the solutions and to propose that and to kind of fill in the gap. Yeah,
we shouldn't wait. We have to start right now with the whole concept. Thank you so much for explaining it to me and taking us along in the journey and being here today. Can I have a big round of applause? And of course, we've got to get with you, but a big round of applause for Julia Sadacek-Westerveld. Thank you so much. And we continue with Patrick Meijers, and your architect partner at Orange Architect. How are you connected with the reconstruction of Ukraine?
I'm also part of UN.
Yeah.
Maybe it's good to explain. In 2004, I was invited in Kharkiv by Oleg Drozdov. At that time, if you zoom out and you see that Ukraine, from the independence in the 1990s until now, it's having a travel to independency. and it has its growing steps of the independency to the fight of being an independent state, and also the struggles and also the troubles with it that comes along with it. So in Kharkiv, we were invited because that at that time, the property of all the ground was owned by the government, and Oleg also foresaw that within a year or half a year, the sales started for this private property. And what happens then if you don't have a good idea in development? At 2010, we were invited in connections in Kiev by Viktor Zotov, also to think about the city development of Kiev, because there was a lack of capacity at the municipality, but also corruption at that time. And he wants to implement good ideas how you could develop Kiev. Yeah. Also after that, we were invited by School of Architecture by Oleg Drozdov again, because the education was not well developed in Ukraine. So he started his own private architectural school. Very nice initiative, and also very good to do this. And recently, last year, I was invited in Lutsk, also by Urban Reform, to think about participation. So if you see back from 2004 until now, you see a growing process of that the whole society now is going to be evolved, so to get better. And they were making very big steps until the invasion, of course, of Russia. And at the same time, also we worked in Russia with Orange. We had a project, this project in St. Petersburg, very big project from 2015. We had a project also in Moscow, and we had a project in Kiev with Gebiedsontwikkeling. Think about a high density, high sustainable development in the city. And it stopped, of course, because of the war. Gebiedsontwikkeling had to flee, and we stopped our Russian projects. At that time, we were thinking also, what could we do to help? So on a private, I had a phone call from a friend of me who said, the son of the wife of Viktor Zotov is fleeing, can we help? Within 2 seconds or 5 seconds, I thought, we architects, we can scale up. And we also thought how to help in refugee housing. So in the end, we came up to help the city of Rotterdam also in Ukraine refugees, shelter for them. And then I ended up in UN on the roof of the HNI, and to see what we could do, also to assist in education and capacity building.
So as a Dutch architect, you're planted then in this situation. So what did you take along with you what did you learn from these experiences, these early reconstruction experiences?
Now, what we learned is going back to the basics. Even now, if I take it back to our Orange approach, also is to think about the strategy. Also, what Julia was saying, so that you have to really think first before you start reading everything, and also then make the next step in having a good approach, a strategy, and then work also accordingly to it. And that's a kind of a basic needs and how you can help in this. Yeah.
And if you look at the biggest challenges, and you have also named a few, but in your perspective, so you were talking about making sure that were places for people to stay, these kinds of things. But what are, in your perspective, the biggest challenges you should tackle heads on right now?
Now, the first thing also what I noticed on the roof, because in the reconstruction, everyone wants to help, and everyone wants to do it fast, because you have a short-term, mid-term, and long-term. But the first thing was in the short-term, how to help, and that everyone wants to run very fast in making new infrastructure, so building back, and firstly also maybe what was there before. But also, I think the most important one is to stop first, because now there's also a moment to think, to read what was good before, and what was working well, what is not working well, and how can you do a new approach in this. And the other thing I think is very important is the sustainability. Also address the sustainability not only for I think the whole planet, of course, but also to do it for a prosperous future for Ukraine. and also to get finance from the European Union, because I think the European Union only is making funding not on the long term, I mean, and not for the short term, but the mid and the long term, if projects are sustainable. And it also is for the IMF and also in the international markets, also they're looking way ahead. And it's very important to implement the sustainable solutions, because now at the moment it's not addressed because it's not known or not well known. And I think we can help in the educated capacity building for this.
So there's a real tension also with the need to move fast to make sure that people are sheltered and things are restored and work properly, but at the same time you have to take your time to decide it properly. Thank you so much, Patrick. Can I have a big round of applause? And of course we'll move on to the conversation later on with everybody, but I want to take time to get to know you all. And I go to Alexandra Tchechenko. I'm sorry for that, Tchechenko. And you are an urban planner at Kuipers Compagnon. And you are connected with the UN network. Could you? So, how did you listen to this conversation? Of course, you're connected with these networks. You know these people, but the things which are starting to emerge is that even though it's a literal crisis situation, it's a war situation, you have to act now. It is even more than in ordinary, like peacetime situation, like here in the Netherlands. It's even more important to design well and to think about what you're doing. Is that something you got along in your work as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, basically, I can relate to everything was said before, and pretty much that reconstruction is not about bricks in the first place. It is about people, and the war. It is the pictures of destroyed houses, of course, gives us all these emotions and understanding the scale of it, but most important, how it influences people. And when we talk about reconstruction, we try to rebuild the people's lives and how it, maybe not how it was before, but with a step forward. Yeah. And basically all the challenges are named before, they are pretty much relevant. But what I wanted to say also, that the capacity of Ukrainians is also shrinking, because the longer it takes, the more people are dying there. And we have also it's not like our army is fighting there and it's only the people from the military out there. They're also our colleagues, architects are on the front line. So they are not designing with us. They choose another way to help the country. And unfortunately, we have also people who we already lost. So and the longer it takes, the less people we have to reconstruct. So this is we also have to take in mind that even though the country before the war, at the beginning, we had a lot of capacity, highly educated people, but we are losing them. And there are already some villages and small cities there where no men, all the jobs are taken by women, and because this is what they have to do. So it's also one of the big challenges that we're facing. And also the education, as Julia said before, that there are students who already 4 years studying remotely. So the corona, as the same as Dutch students experience, that it was a challenge during the corona time to study, but now another 2 years. So you can imagine the student on 4 years course that never done any classes offline and any drawings on offline, that really influence the quality and that really influence the capacity that people will have.
So like long distance education, this has a real life impact.
Yeah.
On quality of education.
Yes,
right now.
This is something that we already see. And we always talk about architects like to start think about reconstruction and thinking about bricks. But I would say it's also old-fashioned architects. Nowadays, architects really think about people and think about recovering people's lives in the first place than the buildings.
Building communities.
Yeah.
Far more than building buildings. And you are connected with the UN network. Could you tell, Patrick already mentioned it, but could you tell a bit about what is it? What is the network and what's the connection?
Yeah, so it started after the full-scale invasion, like many Ukrainians, as me as well, and Patrick also mentioned now that everybody started with some first aid help, but in short term it was clear that something should be done next. And UN started with simply initiative to organize a debate where Dutch and Ukrainians would be on even talking about the reconstruction. And we also realized that there are so many refugees came to Netherlands from Ukraine with the background in architecture and design that they also need to navigate here. So for that, we started organizing networking events. And this is how it kind of started brewing.
Yeah.
And from there, we moved to organizing lectures, organizing studio visits, and as the previous speaker said about different scales and different temporalities, this is something you always have to deal with. And it's hard to choose. When somebody would ask me if there is a specific topic or if you focus on urgent and long term, I wouldn't dare to make this decision. For me, like all of this is necessary. And in 2 years, we've basically been an initiative, and now we are moving towards the institutionalization. Yes. With a more clear structure. And basically, we have 3 main activities types, which are networking, capacity building, education, and think tank.
Yeah, so both for the people who are right here, right here in the Netherlands to connect and make sure, but also to work on the future and the future connections.
Yeah, and also it grew also with the connections in Ukraine, because you cannot only do it here, you have to do it with Ukrainians in Ukraine.
Thank you so much. We're going to talk later on tonight, but can I get a big round of applause for Alexandra Tkachenko? And we go on to the last speaker for tonight. And of course, after that, we're going to continue with each other. And then, of course, we're going to talk with the rest of the audience with all the questions you have. I'll get to you in a bit. But here at the table is Lilith Breddels. You're director from Arcus, a member of the Urban Coalition for Ukraine. Thank you for joining us. And of course, again, perhaps all the story you knew. Let's start with the book Julia was mentioning. You've got 2 books with you. Why did you bring those books? You had to wait a long term to be...
I brought them because I think they're relevant for the subject.
Yeah.
It's, both books are being published last year by Roskvit. That's the name of the Urban Coalition for Ukraine. And Roskvit means blossom, I guess.
Yeah. So for the people at home, perhaps we can show the camera.
This is an overview of what we did in the first year. So it's full of the different projects and plans, but there are also some more essay-like stories about what can or should be done according to us or some of the people. So it's a collection of first years of work. Mm-hmm. This one is a vision for Mariupol. It's one of the projects that we worked on. It's a study of planning for Mariupol, Mariupol's future. So it is a method, it is a methodology, it is an idea of how you can envision how a city like that could be reconstructed in the future. Yeah, and that is together with the municipality of Mariupol in exile at the moment. Mm-hmm. The project is ongoing, so it's not like it's now fixed. There are 4 teams working on it on an ongoing base to look at possible futures.
And you're an historian from trade?
Art historian.
Yeah. And how are you connected with this project and this topic of reconstruction in the broader sense? Of course, through these books, but how, on a day-to-day basis, you're working on these kinds of methods to look at reconstruction.
Yeah, how I came here was not. I don't have the history of Ukraine like all the others here at the table. I came to Ukraine the last 2 years 5 times, but before that I've never been there. I came to Ukraine because I work at Argis, as you explained. Argis is a magazine. It's now called Volume. And we organize different projects. And at some point we basically noticed that a lot of projects that we did were in post-war countries or post-conflict countries. So we did a project worked a lot actually in Beirut. We went to Afghanistan, we were in Ramallah, in Pristina. And in all those projects, in talking to the people who were working there as urbanists or architects or also other people, citizens, we noticed that how different those places are. There are still kind of similarities. And I think Julia pointed a lot of them out. I also want to say that actually you are the person that all those urbanists are longing for the most, because indeed it all starts with governing and finance and all this basic layer before you even can start thinking of reconstruction. But what we saw in all those instances, that a lot of things went wrong, and a lot of things went wrong having to do basically with governance. So there were a lot of similarities in all those places, or capacity. So,
so you would think that things go wrong because of the fact that there are perhaps landmines or destroyed buildings, or half of the population died, or majority of the population just left. It is governance. Why is it governance? What?
No, that's. I mean, those things happen because there's a war.
Yeah, of course.
But what happens afterwards? What is happening during this phase of starting to think about reconstruction, is how then you prepare basically for peace.
Yeah.
And that is something extremely cynical that they say in Sarajevo. We were not ready for peace. Which is a very cynical thing, but it meant that they were not prepared. They were not prepared for all those developers who suddenly started building.
Yeah.
All those people coming back, all this diaspora who do come back and then think, okay, I need a house and I have some money and this was my plot, I'm going to build here. So there were no rules, there were no regulations, or too many or too little. In Beirut, there were too many rules. There was just a government, a central government, who thought, okay, we have to take this into our hands, because otherwise it's going to be a mess. If we leave this to the people, it will be a mess. So we do it. We make a big company and we just reconstruct the city center, basically as it was, but then more beautiful, and then everybody will be super happy. Well, it's now more than 30 years later, and the people are not happy, and the city center is completely emptied out, too rich. All the people who used to live there before are gone. Pristina is almost the opposite. There were no rules and regulations, and all the diaspora people started building, and they built like on top of each other, totally unsustainable, no regulations about sustainability in terms of construction, but also in terms of social sustainability. I mean, they're just placed like this next to each other. So
from Lebanon to Kosovo to Bosnia, all examples of where the government wasn't ready to take on the original role to manage the rebuilding of the city. How can you learn then from that? Of course, be ready, but that's easier said than done. So how could we help perhaps from the rest of Europe with being ready for reconstruction?
Yeah, because part is governance, but part is also, of course, the people there, or the people here, indeed. I mean, that's what UN is doing, and what a lot of people actually who are here in the room are doing. Architects from there, living in the Netherlands, being able, from this distance, to think and to prepare and to make plans, to create visions, but also to help with, and that I think I'm now the fourth mentioning it, capacity building.
You
there in Ukraine. So giving courses, giving education, giving examples, giving visions, and maybe an important part is also giving hope. And that is also by going there. And what I think is amazing, I mean, this year is a conference in Lviv last year. And that is definitely not the only one. There are all the time, there are international conferences being organized by people there who invite other people to prepare, to think, to make plans, to create ideas. And I think that is crucial. And I'm super impressed also by that people find the energy and the stamina to do that and who actually want to think and not just do. And that's happening there. So.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And can I also have a big round of applause for Lila Breidels. And then we move on because you give a brilliant introduction for the broader conversation and I want to bring you all together. So it's a bit strange, but I wanted to give time for each of you to tell your story and your perspective. So we have 4 times talked about capacity, we talked about how to build governments, we talked about the fact that it's about the people and also people having to be ready. That's a hard thing to do. So to go back to the main question of the reconstruction. So we're looking about how to rebuild it from now, even before the end of the war, reconstructing it. What is the main thing we as fellow Europeans all together can do to make sure that this reconstruction goes well? To follow up on Lilith. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe it depends on what you can do. It's always finding the match, what is needed and what you can. I would say it's also one of the first things we did at the UN, the very first our event in UN, what we had the discussion between Ukrainians who are saying what is needed and Dutch people who are saying what we can.
Yeah.
And then it's something that you can learn from. And also it depends on what kind of level of commitment you can do, because it's brilliant when people can go to Ukraine and dedicate themselves to the project there, but not everybody can, not everybody ready for that. But still, if you're ready to help with something small, it's already a good step. So sometimes give one lecture, it's already can inspire somebody, already can bring something. If you can give get an internship for somebody who flee here, it's also like big commitment, like give a lecture, give a tour. Small things are piling up and they help.
Thank you. I know it's an impossible question to ask, and still we're talking about something that is kind of impossible to oversee, the total reconstruction of one of the largest countries in Europe after a devastating war and how you should start that. So it is very difficult to talk about this. You wanted to? You're just listening to me. I thought you wanted to say something. So connecting with that, and there were talks from the World Bank, of course, about amounts and Lukashenko. Never mind. There were talks about my brain. There were talks about amounts. So it's not so much about the amount of money needed for reconstruction. It's more about the way of doing that, of commitment. Is that the thing we should talk about?
I would say so. I mean, what we learned from Balkan War and what we heard from experts that were working on it, that, money will come. It depends how, as you said, how you're ready for that and how the systems are already established to use this money wisely. But they will come somehow.
Yeah.
Maybe good. Oh.
Yeah, go ahead. And then.
Okay, maybe, what we normally see, or what you saw before, it comes from a Soviet state, former Soviet state, and that everything was top-down regulated, also implemented. And I think now, 30 years after the independence of Ukraine, you also see that the bottom-up energy was starting, but we have to, with it said before, with capacity, education, it has to grow more, so that from bottom up, I think the power has to be more equal with the top-down approach. So it's not about or top-down or bottom-up approach, but if they coexist with each other on a normal, balanced way, you have a very good system. At the moment, the bottom-up power is not there because of corruption, because of a lack of capacity, etc. So I think if we can, in the end, restore this natural balance between top-down and bottom-up, I think then it's also a good way how you can rebuild Ukraine. They can do it themselves. The people can do it themselves. People believe that they can have an impact, and I think this is a very important one for this process.
Thank you. Julia?
Yeah, so when we talk about this question, how can we help? And I think it's good also to think why do we want to help, and what type of results do we want to achieve? Do we want to share knowledge? Do we want to participate in exciting new projects? Because it is, there is also a kind of playground for testing out if you're starting building it. So it really depends on that. And when you look at how Ukraine approaches, like Ukrainian experts or government approaches this, they have divided the whole process of reconstruction in 3 tiers. It's fast recovery, so those are just quick repairs of critical infrastructure, of energy, supply chain, of really quick, easy buildings, just to survive the first 50 years in order before the really comprehensive plans can be implemented. And in that first tier, there are also some Dutch organizations that just went to Ukraine, and that's what we see quite a lot. They go to Ukraine, they just go to random city they would like to work with, and they agree with the local mayor, and then they start their project. And it's on the one hand, there is this urgency, so there is a need to do that. On the other hand, there is a bit, it's difficult to coordinate that, like on a national level, where to do this. So this also...
There's a tension between having to do something right now?
They kind of... Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, can I go ahead?
Yeah.
They kind of find a solution for that. Ukrainian government is using a kind of blended approach.
Yeah.
The most strategic big infrastructural projects are coordinated on a national level by the Agency of Reconstruction, and then the cities are free to implement their own projects, and then they need to submit their project, their applications to DREAM. It's like this digital ecosystem, they call it, for accountable recovery, and that's a quite interesting concept.
Okay, thank you. There is a question in the audience. Perhaps Sebastian, you can take the microphone and go to the person in the back. And after this, we're going to continue because I want to go into depth, but I try to tackle this topic, even though it's very difficult to do, but I try to understand it. Yeah, go ahead.
One short comment to what Patrick just said about blend of top-down and bottom-up. And your question how Dutch can help, and this is where foreign experts can help, because there is sometimes the gap between local or national government and the bottom-up initiatives, who quite often are professionals, but local government don't see them as a professionals because it's an initiative. But when foreign experts come and tell the government that they are good, then they're, they're good, okay.
Yeah, but that's the tension, again, to get back. And I'll go to the person in the back in a minute. But that is the tension at one side. You want to help a lot of people, want to put in the energy to do something good. And at the same time, lots of random things can happen that not per se have a positive effect or doesn't align what the Ukrainian people want, but is perhaps something we want or we think is nice. So that's a difficult thing to tackle. But perhaps there's help from the audience. Could you please... and a few rules for audience participation. Well, actually one. It is... Sebastian is holding the microphone, and he is going to hold the microphone. That's one. And the second thing, it's nice if you can introduce yourself.
Okay, Godelief van Heteren. I currently work in Ukraine, or with Ukrainian colleagues in healthcare. I'm super impressed by the ladies on the right. And actually, you're very polite. Julia, you're saying, governance is a big problem, and the problem might also be that in this chaotic moment, all kinds of impulses of wanting to help, wanting to do, etc., are maybe disturbing a development that was already happening in Ukraine before the war, before COVID, of a lot of internal modernization of all kinds, with very good experts, with a lot of local people who were, on the par with everybody else. So there's no reason, because of this war and because of what happened before, to now sort of go and sit on your knees and say, okay, now all these outsiders have to come, or all these foreigners have to come. And so I'm very happy that you're saying, you say it very politely, there's people coming in, and in a way they disturb the local governance process. I mean, they're coming with their projects, they're coming with all their good intentions. So could you say maybe a little bit less polite? Because my sense is what you try to say is, rally on the side of the people who want to build that new governance that was already underway before the war. Yeah. And however complex it is, there's a lot of complexity in there. But don't come with all your own dreams. I mean, there's a lot of people in this city and in the Dutch cities, if you might have noticed, that really are nice developers and designers, and they all like to do all kinds of nice stuff. Same in the healthcare sphere. But, Ukrainians are very capable of designing their own histories and their own futures. So is there a way you can say what you said just now, is to say it a little less politely?
Thank you. Thank you for, actually, Godelieve is also a board member, I think, still for the European movement in the Netherlands. So thank you for this contribution. That is, okay.
I'm very interested in, we should not sit here because there's tested hierarchies in our conversation. Like there's some people that now are in need of assistance by others. Yes, there's a lot of need for new international collaboration, but Ukrainians are hugely powerful, and there was a lot of stuff going on before all this shit happened.
Thank you.
And so, yeah.
You should be less polite and more straightforward, apparently. No, but does this person make a point?
This was a question to Julia, but I would like
yeah,
to
for
comment
both of you, the floor's yours.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, because it's good to hear that the story that I think we are all, but also on telling, resonates. When talking about this specific situation, local governments, and you're right, they're quite assertive. Ukrainians, I would say, they're quite assertive. They know what they want, they know what they need, and they can communicate it quite well. They have learned to do that. But the situation they're in limits them in the possibilities that they have. And perhaps the solutions that are being offered, they see that it's not ideal, they will say that. But in the end of the day, that's the funding, and that's like what can help them on the short term, so they will accept it. And because of this urgency, like quickly, we need to do it for yesterday. And that creates, this a bit chaotic urban development plans, something that I guess you will have to solve later when building sustainably.
And Alexandra?
Yeah, I would like to respond to the international help. It was one of the reasons, I think would be better. It was one of the reasons why UN started, because I studied here in Netherlands and in the IHS, which works a lot with international, in the global south, how it politely was said. And I saw how often the internationals come in and teaching local people how to deal with that. And that's why, straight from the beginning in UN was saying that we want to build a platform where Ukrainians and Dutch, they speak on the same level, because they're both experts in what they're doing. Yeah.
And the thing how I understood the question is also that, and that is the thing, I hope I was doing it right, but I tried to touch that, is that there are so many ways the rest of Europe can do to help, but there are a lot of ways that this help doesn't really reach the people or the places where it's needed, or it's really connecting with local examples. So that is UN. UN is one of these ways of connecting that. Do you understand correctly?
Kind of.
Kind of. Yeah, tell me.
Well, for me, it's important that we speak on the same level, that Ukrainians are not seen as somebody, as you said, who is seeking for help. But
of course,
there is a base where their experts are even. But as Julia said, that sometimes the people on the ground, they face with so much challenges at the same time that they need to accept the help because there is lack of mental capacity that you can deal with in the same moment.
Yeah.
And you need help just mentally sometimes.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Sorry, Gadelieve. If you really want to, Sebastian can come with you the microphone, but I try to move on to the next topic. Really quick.
No, I'll shut up for the rest of the evening. But
you don't have to.
Reconstruction is a business model. I've been at the Lugano conference. It was a big conference where a lot of people were discussing, and you see the sharks coming in. You see the sharks coming in. Because everybody with a little bit of business sense says Ukraine is going to be very interesting. And Julia, to your point, that also presses for agendas that are not the long-term visions necessarily that Ukraine is asking for. And so there's internal pressure for quick fixes, but it's also outside push. And both these sharks you need to keep out somehow. And then I'll shut up.
You don't. Thank you for joining the conversation. So, but we take this as a point in the rest of the conversation and things we have to be aware of on all sides of this discussion.
Okay.
You want to respond?
Yeah, because I do want to continue on this because I cannot agree more. But I hope that was part of the conversation we were having because it's part of the preparation. Mm-hmm. And what you're mentioning is like, I think whatever capacity a country has before a war, you are never prepared for a war. That's what if you would here look at Amsterdam and our mayor would be confronted with what Mariupol has been confronted with, she would have to turn for help. We would okay, how are we going to do it? Whatever mayor knows how to completely build up a country with people who are still fighting and how to prepare, how to keep out those sharks. That is basically, I think, the question that we are all trying to work on and prepare for.
Yeah.
Now, maybe to add on, maybe I'm part of the shark for some people, but I think what is interesting, and I think the energy you are describing is maybe correct. So our goal is to get the Ukrainians prepared to use the energy of the sharks for their own good. That is basically what we trying to do. So not with a helicopter putting architects in or international developers doing it for them only for their own profit. We're trying to prepare the Ukrainians for this, to be aware of it.
In 10 years from now, I would like to see a follow the money kind of report on the money flows around Ukraine.
In 10 years, you want to see a follow the money kind of report on the money flows from Ukraine. Please raise your hand for next time, and we keep it here so people can see it at home. You wanted to respond, and then one question from the audience. And Sebastian, can you do that? Julia.
No, I totally agree with Patrick. This is exactly the problem Ukraine is facing: how to generate investments, and they should come from the private sector. Yeah. So sharks, it's good to have them, but the conditions, the framework should be there, and the government should be able to put forward the strict rules.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why we actually need all these discussions and all these initiatives who show where we can go to show that the government could also react on these sharks ideas, but also it's not only sharks, but also the international funds, because if you compare what conditions of MVF that they are coming and conditions of European Bank, they are completely different. If you talk about housing, MVF is saying that, everybody should take a loan, everybody should own a house and buy a new house in loan, while European fund would say, let's build social housing.
Yeah, a lot of different perspectives. Over there's one person who would like to ask a question, and there's one person in the back. Pauline, that's Pauline. Again, she's holding on to the microphone, very important. And if you could introduce yourself, that would be lovely.
My name is Willem Wiggers. I've been volunteering in Ukraine last summer, in Irpin, Kiev first, later in Odessa. My volunteering work in Irpin was rebuilding houses, re-roofing houses. And if I hear the story over here from all four of you, it sounds like a very elitarian business. I haven't felt like a shark myself. I have been working with 10 Ukrainians who freed up their 1 or 2 days a week to do rebuilding work voluntarily. And I was one of the guest foreigners, together with someone from Chile and another one from Australia. And I have been wondering all the time, how will these people that have suffered so much, and I've heard thousands of stories, and the stories are very harsh, and these people are not wealthy. They are, when they are 80, 90 years old, confronted with a house without a roof. And then there are some foreigners coming in. You may call them sharks, you may call them anything else. How are they going to pay such a luxury flat that is being built by an architectural company over here, which for sure requires a large mortgage, not payable for someone of 80 years old, as I have been helping in their house?
Thank you. So how can people, and the thing about the sharks, please let it rest. If we want to talk about it more, we can. But I think the point that the energy in the rest of Europe to help in any way that it's there for Ukraine in a way that helps actually Ukraine, not as a victim, but as equal. It's their country, it's not ours. This point is there. I think we all understand it, but move on to the question, how can we make sure that these buildings are affordable to there? And then we can go to the different projects, because I want to talk about the projects. So do you want to respond to the affordability of housing?
No, I think you are with the boots on the ground. You are helping the day-to-day people with the present, so short-term needs. That we don't do this. Sorry, UN is for the mid and the long term. What we want to do is to get the society prepared, to get the people prepared, to get the developers prepared, to get the law, the legislation prepared to build in wood, to build affordable housing, to have social housing, to have a VVE, sorry, I don't know what it is in English.
Homeowners Association.
Homeowners Association principles, just to get quality in and to also have this payable houses. So we're not telling what to do, we only tell examples how we do it here, so people can see what they can do there. So it's a very important one, but on the long term, we're more focused on the mid and the long term.
Alexandra.
Yeah, the houses, first of all, it's not always that they have to take loans for that. There are multiple different financial systems for that. But there are also some initiatives like you participated, for example, Open Door Ukraine, who are restoring village houses in Ukraine. They came to us and said, like, okay, we now set up the system how to do it, but we understand that the way we're doing it, it's not the best. Could you, architects, help us how to make it a bit more efficient? And then here we can help it, and it's not always going to be more expensive. It's sometimes changing one material to another material or proposing a bit another building system. But they have tested something on ground, like emergency thing, and now they're ready to move for something more efficient and more sustainable. It's not always means that it's going to be fancy house from OMA or MVRDV, but it can be also...
OMA, of course, is the architecture institution or the architecture bureau. There's a question over there, and I see a question over there, and then I want to go to the projects.
My name is Ian. Maybe a bit more technical questions. I was just wondering if you're going to rebuild a city like Mariupol, which is near the Russian border, and we think Russia would not be changed in the near future. must you look at, because I already hear high-rising buildings, and we know at the moment high-rising buildings are very vulnerable. So if you look at the architecture of rebuilding a city, you need to look at the more lower buildings, so no high-rising buildings, to be more war-proof, but at the same time also looking at the city as to be sustainable. So what I mean by that is looking, for example, a train station, instead of putting on the ground, putting underground, so at the same time it's more sustainable, or highways, and at the same time also more protective against a new Russian aggression. And that you can, and then you can use this kind of buildings as multi-purpose, also as shelter for the public if there's again an attack. It's those kind of things that you're also going to look as well if you're rebuilding a city like Mariupol.
Some responses from you, and then person over there. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, just a really quick, and I hope this person doesn't feel put on the spot, but we actually have someone in audience that worked at the municipality of Mariupol and maybe has some ideas to share.
Does this person want to respond? You're free to say no. No is a valid answer today. I'm not sure who you are, but if you're willing, raise your hand, and if you're not, then we leave it at that. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Oh, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, hello. We are from Mariupol, me and my colleagues. We are working for Mariupol City Council. Now we are working for Dutch and and about our city. There is very, very heavy to speak about this because of emotional, and city now is occupied. Yes. And there is the biggest city in occupation. Before the war, around 500,000 population, and 90% of city infrastructure destroyed, and that's it. And even now we are talking about how we could reconstruct our city, how we could rebuild it. And just last week we have a very good conversation with EBRD and PricewaterhouseCoopers methodology, how to make it, and definitely we should build better. And in this field, we definitely need this expertise, not only all over the world, and of course of the Dutch expert, because yes, a lot of architectural things, you know how to do it and make it more effective. But in the same times, we should thinking about the peoples, like Alexandra says, because before the war, it was 500,000 people, and when we left our homes, it was maybe 100,000. Yeah. And how we can take these people back when city will be liberated? How we can create the economy? Because when we speak with our neighbors, with our the main question is about housing and about the jobs. And it's not only about the urbanistic decisions. It's more harder. It's more deeper in economy, in a lot of things. Ecological safety, mine safety, and so on, so on. So yeah, it's more deeper questions, and urbanistic is one of the skeleton of the bones which should construct this body. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this.
I would like to reflect also on the question regarding safety. Now, by the law, every building, every multiple apartment has to have a bomb shelter from now on. The way you organize it, it would be, it's up to the design and how it would be more efficient. But on the urban planning scale, it's still a question because the rocket you cannot be prepared for the rocket. Even though on some of our workshops, we've been working on the city of Kherson, which is next to the front line. And one of the Dutch architects said, wow, it's the first time I'm drawing the missile trajectory on my maps to understand where it's safer to design something. Yeah, so this is something we should take into account now, but there are also questions not only to urban planners, but also to our defense, to our army, because we should consult with them, because how can we know this, this input we should take from them.
Thank you. There's one in this round from the audience, one more question, and that's the person over there who was raising their hands for quite a while.
Hello, allemaal. My name is Mikola Trifonov, I colleague Wagner and Mikita before war work in Mariupol municipality and now work international advisor of municipality Utrecht. What important for me, very important connect money after war and how we can help, can help Dutch organization, Dutch municipality, Dutch company. Now very important for Ukraine planning strategy, planning real project. Because International Fund, World Bank, European Investment Bank, EBRD, IFC give money only on real project. But now in Ukraine we not have expertise in municipality. We not have expertise in local level because before war we have not many people who have European expertise, international expertise, connection money in municipality project. And in future, very important help planning new strategy, new project. Now have very good expertise with organization Roskvit, VNG, organization ONUN, and present best European practice, best Netherlands practice, help planning new vision and new strategy. And now we not understand when finish this war. We not understand how finish this war. But we can helping now city in Ukraine. We now can helping people from Ukraine planning new vision and new future. And now we can present best practice and help planning new future, new European future Ukraine.
Thank you. Yeah.
So can I just add that they are all part of this? I mean, they are in the Mariupol team, the whole crew there. So they're from Mariupol and creating this new vision. So.
Thank you so much for joining us and sharing these stories. And again, I can understand that it's very emotional. I don't have these experiences as the other people from the Netherlands. They don't have these experiences, or most of them they don't. So thank you for sharing that, and I understand that it's emotional. So, still want to look at the different country projects. You shown us the two books you brought along as examples of the projects of the coalitions between Dutch and Ukrainian builders and architects and other kinds of urbanists. How to look forward, and I wanted to look at a few examples, and let's start, for example, with Roswit. Like, could you tell a bit more about how this could help in the longer term and what it entails?
First of all, I mean, we are not like a Dutch-Ukrainian organization. We are a Ukrainian organization with a lot of internationals around it trying to help, and a few Dutch.
Yeah.
I hoped to have explained that what we do is mainly react to questions. So most of the questions are from municipalities. Yeah. Municipalities coming and asking, can you help us with a future vision for our city, for a specific problem, for maybe safety issues, maybe very large regional. Very often the question comes that Mikita was explaining, or Mikola, there was the question about capacity coming back. How do we make sure that those people are coming back? The second one always mentioned is how do we make this sustainable, and then I mean really energy-wise and climate resistance. So those are the two questions, like really long-term questions. Like how are we going to build it that people really want to live here? Because they all, and especially many young people, went now to international universities. So how do they come back? So that are very, I think, relevant questions and issues to work on. And what we do is a lot also on working together there and trying to work towards that capacity building to create more communities and municipalities that actually can tackle those problems.
And these municipalities are the municipalities, of course, in Ukraine. And we just saw the map behind us, the previous slide for Sebastian, with where it says 90 members. and with all dots all over the world. Are those places where the people live at this moment?
Some are Ukrainians living in other countries, and some are living in those other countries and are other nationalities.
Yeah, and 60% of your experts are Ukrainians.
Yeah, and it's shifting a little bit, like most of because there are members, but some are really active and are in the teams, so there are a lot of project teams. I think there are now about 10, 12 projects going on at this moment. And the members of the teams, actually, most of the time it's like 80% Ukrainian, so it's shifting a little bit, and the people around it are adding up to those 40%.
Amazing. Alexander, with UN, what's the latest project you're working on?
The latest project is Panorama Ukraine, which is in consortium together with International Biennale Rotterdam, with College van Rijksstad and Vereniging van Delta Metropolis. And on this, we organized, for example, in December, a big, like a week-long workshop to tackle the question, the issue of the Kakhovka Dam explosion that was destroyed by Russians in summer. And there, you see Mikola also there. And there we brought together Dutch and Ukrainian and also international graduates from Archiprix, which are the best architecture graduates from all over the world, to brainstorm on the questions that we received from municipalities next to the Kakhovka Dam. Yeah. And then now we're in the process when we're giving them back the feedbacks, but during these workshops, how we organized it, that each table had the 2 table leaders, which was one Ukrainian, one Dutch, and we also brought experts from Ukraine that were all the time like circling around the teams and advising them on what they are doing. But that was also important for us, that there were a lot of international students who found out about Ukraine more, because let's be honest, before the full-scale invasion, not many people knew about Ukraine existence. I knew that it's something probably cold next to Russia as well. And now they know more.
Geography for beginners. That is... Sebastian says that you have to sit closer to each other for the camera, something for the thing. So make sure that you're on the step there, so everyone at home can see you in a good way. It is an emotional evening, so we're moving and changing, and so it is a way of collaborating between Dutch one side here in the Netherlands, but also with lots and lots and lots of Ukrainian experts.
Yeah, together. And it was also important for Ukrainians to come here. Some of them would say, like, I came here for one day, but I felt like I had a week-long professional vacation, because the stress there is very high, and in here they could relax a bit and put their minds into the long-term visions. But we plan to continue with this within this Panorama Ukraine with 6 more topics, and I made a small survey on the Ukrainian professionals, which topics they would prioritize, and actually governance is the first thing they put. Like, they say, like, we can draw beautiful plans, we can plan something sustainable, but it will all, like, will face the wall of the low capacity and the governance issues. So let's push this forward.
Thank you. And if we look, because we have been talking about all the things we have to do, we have been talking about all the challenges that coming towards us and we have to tackle all together. At the same time, you have to make sure then you do the short-term things at the right thing. You make sure that the needs of the short-term are met, and at the same time, you have to do the long-term correct, and you have to tackle all these things. And we touched it earlier this evening, but I want to go in depth on that. So because I don't understand it, to be honest, where do you even start with designing a sustainable future for your city when your city is halfway destroyed? So how could you start designing that? Perhaps you haven't. Patrick, you can.
Sorry, I don't have a solution for this. I'm not even trying to.
No, but
the only thing, and that's what I addressed also in the beginning, when we sat on the roof, also Mikla was there, and a lot of people, they see their city is destroyed.
Yes.
Everyone wants to do something. Everyone doesn't know exactly what to do, but they want to run, they want to rebuild, etc. The only thing, you can't do it because it's occupied. What you can do is to understand your city, so to look back, to have a clear overview on what it was, to read, the world is moving fast forward, sustainability comes in, think about a lot of things to think about first.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit weird to say, but you have time for it now. And I think you showed also there are a lot of ideas already, a lot of the thinking is already done, and a reading is done. The only thing you can do is to be prepared.
But at the same time, I mean, there are cities where things are being built right now. And that's also happening on the ground. I mean, there's also libraries that are being shut down, and it's super important to restore that library and to bring back those books and to talk about, I mean, all those work and discussions have to go on at the same time, because, I mean, as Alexandra just said about the knowledge about Ukraine here is very weak. So it's very important to tell those stories. But also discussions in Ukraine itself are very important. Like, what is our identity? Who are we? What is the history? What do we want to tell? What stories to create? All those things are happening right now in Ukraine, in all those municipalities, in all those communities, in all those different instances. In Lviv, they are, that is not on the front line, but it's extremely active city working with internally displaced people, so refugees, creating houses, but also creating kind of methodologies again that other cities can take from, but also the whole veteran community, like all the hospitals, all the places where people are how do you call it? Revalideren? Recovering from the war.
Yeah. If I can jump on that.
Please do.
On that last point, and come back to where do you need to start? So exactly, we see the society is changing, and the use of the cities, it will also change. How, like for example, veterans that have lost parts of their bodies, for example, there's many more invalids, and the infrastructure will have to be adjusted to that. How the city looks like. So I guess thinking of how the city will be used and how to rebuild areas. Nothing, or like most of the things are not being rebuilt the way how they were, that are totally destroyed. And the second is prioritize which projects needs to be rebuilt first.
If I also may add to, it's not only about adjusting, if we talk about veterans, it's not about adjusting the cities, but also adjusting their homes. And we're not talking only about the destroyed homes, but these veterans go home to the houses which are there, but they are not fitted to their capacities anymore. So you have to deal with a lot of apartments that have to be adjusted, and it's also a lot of construction works. And if we talk about like what do you do if your city was destroyed and then liberated, I would put as an example city of Trostianets, which is not far away from the border, and it was occupied and then liberated a few months after with a lot of destruction. But what they had amazingly active mayor who just simply start networking and simply start reaching out every possible connection he had with the list of things they need, and sending it out like, how can you help me with things I have, and also at the same time mobilizing the local people there to do voluntarily repairing the houses, repairing the public space, and at the same time this helped him to attract some international funds, because they see that things are changing, that things are already done. And since he was also reaching out, also some designer offices that help him to visualize what exactly is needed somehow for the city, that also moved things forward. But
so again, competent government, competent local government and local leadership in that sense to take on the crisis.
Yeah, and a lot of proactive people and networking.
Thank you. Are there some questions in the audience? Perhaps there's one person over there. And Pauline is coming your way. Give her time to do that.
Hi, my name is Dylan. Thank you very much for the interesting panel. I'm actually having a question about whether we are ready. I really value the remarks about the silent hierarchy and also of the sharks. There they are again at the start. And I'm actually wondering what your perspective is on if the Dutch government and if European institutions are ready, if they're preparing in the right way to actually contribute to reconstruction in the proper way when the time is there.
Who a specific person? I think you're asking it to this side of the table, but whom are you asking to? Sorry?
Any thoughts are welcome.
Any thoughts are welcome. Anyone who wants to respond to that?
I can always respond to that.
Go ahead.
So what we see now is that the whole framework of helping and placing recovery into the development cooperation is changing towards the investment trade cooperation. So it's very much from helping to collaborating, cooperating, and that is also reflected in the European funds, in the institutions, how they go about it. If you look at the European Commission specifically, they already they have developed this Ukraine facility. It's a huge machine with a lot of expertise in it, with dedicated funds, and so they have started thinking about this project and having intensive coordination and conversations with the Ukrainian authorities. So it all was quite developed in consultation, or I would say together. If you look at the national governments of the EU member states and also the Netherlands, then there's also quite some work done into developing approaches and defining the key areas, because it's, especially for a country like the Netherlands, it might make sense to specialize in the 3 key areas, and those are there, like RWO, I think most of you know.
3 key area, and I don't know.
I will explain.
Please.
But so RWO is coordinating this project, and the 3 areas are water, renovation, everything what connects to water, agriculture, and health. And there are 3 platforms that support Dutch businesses who want to reconstruct it. There's also a special envoy for reconstruction and that is responsible for looking for a way how to enable financing for Dutch companies to invest in Ukraine.
Thank you.
I would also maybe add that neither we also know exactly what to do, all these initiatives. We're all learning by doing, and this is the same I see that the governments are also learning by doing. They try in different ways. Like the first Dutch government sent money to Ukraine through EU. Then they realized that maybe it's not the most efficient way. Okay, let's try it through RWO and just keep trying and adjusting.
Yeah, it's keep trying new ways of doing it, but as long as the goal is there and to make sure that it gets there. Another person in the venue, the person in the back. Pauline, holds onto the microphone.
Boudewijn Piscaire from Mobacoa. We know technically very well how to make reconstructible buildings. We have a shortage of housing in the Netherlands. Why don't we build here and then say in a couple of years from now we take it all over to there?
Question. I have no idea if this could be a possibility. Is this a possibility?
Yes.
It would, of course.
We have the courthouse in Amsterdam. The court was built 6 years ago, and now it's standing in Enschede.
Yeah, there are many opportunities. There's a wonderful example of a villa that used to stand next to the Vondelpark in Amsterdam that has been moved brick for brick to Beeldhoven, which I always find very interesting on the impact of the cost of labor versus the cost of goods. Quite interesting examples. I know that this you can move buildings from one place to another, and with prefab buildings, of course, this is easier. The thing I want to know is this a feasible solution? Could you do that on the shorter term, and why would you want to do that? And
yeah, we have indeed a discussion.
The microphone is not on yet. Perhaps we can use the other one. I'm not. We have to improvise. Sorry for that.
I think for short-term solutions, I think maybe it could be possible, but also have to take into account to move housing around on the globe. So not only maybe Ukraine, but also further is also a sustainability question, I think. So in that perspective, I think you have to zoom out and see what is possible, but I don't know how big the houses. If it is like container houses, it's already done, this kind of things. From the Netherlands, I think also from Poland. There are also container houses now for the short-term solutions are also moved to Ukraine. But if you do it on the mid and the long term, I think it's not feasible because you don't get quality kind of cities or villages with it.
Yeah. Sorry for the quick response. Because it's late in the evening, I don't.
No, the beams and columns and connection points are critical. Building with bio-based materials for Ukraine is very attractive. Straw bale buildings is extremely modern, I would say. So you can make a combination of that. You can have the structural beams and columns and connectors.
If you're talking about demountability of the buildings, yeah, that could be interesting. Yeah, it's a short answer. Yes, that could be interesting.
Okay. Thank you for the idea. Other questions from the audience? I can't see anyone. Then we're gonna continue here at the table, and we're gonna wrap it up for tonight because we've talked about a lot of things, and we posed ourselves an impossible question. Because it's an impossible situation, it's a terrible situation, and we want to get things better. And the thing we're saying, how you can connect people with each other, connect expertise with each other, to make sure that you, from our perspective at least, do the right thing to move things in the right direction. So I want to ask you as a final question for tonight, what is the line we should continue talking about? The reconstruction of Ukraine. How can we make sure that this is still something that's on our mind in the coming years? And what do you need then from the broader community here in Amsterdam to continue doing that? Both Ukrainians who live here in Amsterdam or the Netherlands, but also the rest of the city and the rest of the country. And I'll start with you, and I'll go like this, if this is okay. So, do you have an answer to that, or do you have? Perhaps, what would you like us to continue talking about? Let's keep it easier then.
Yeah, I think indeed we're talking about so many different topics, and there are so many different topics. And there I want to align with Alexandra. Everything is needed, and everything can be helpful. So having discussions, organizing talks, learning more about Ukraine to keep also the interest going, basically, because I mean, it's also cynical that people are turning to the next war. So I think it's very important to keep it on the agenda and to keep on thinking and relating, to keep on really thinking. I would like to end a little bit more critical on the Dutch government approach. I mean, you had a very positive story about that, but I'm not always so enthusiastic about what is happening. And I do think, yeah, we are learning on the fly, but at the same time, how often did this happen? How often do international organizations, does Europe, has to deal with situations like that? It is not the first time. So I would have hoped that we were a few steps further in the learning from, basically.
You would have hoped for more.
I'm sorry?
You would have hoped for more.
Yeah, I would have hoped for more insight in actually how to collaborate and cooperate more with a country that is indeed, in this case, Ukraine, but in another case, another country, and how to really get involved.
You brought with you a lot of these books. It's a beautiful book.
Yeah,
I
they are
haven't
for
read
sale
it, so
there. I will be a saleswoman with my little summit thingy.
Okay, that's one thing. That's one thing to support you and to support Ross with. What are the other ways of supporting the organization?
Yeah, by becoming a member, by helping with expertise. I mean, I think there's a lot of people here. Everybody is somehow involved or interested. And please contact us and think of your own contribution. And that is actually, again, what you just said. Everybody can bring his or her own knowledge and expertise and interest towards it.
Thank you. Patrick.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of initiatives, a lot of people that are wanting to help. Our goal is also to see how we can connect more with all the different organizations. So we're also we are talking with a lot of them how to professionalize it. So we're also our own foundation is also maybe next month officially there. And the other thing is what we also discussed before is to keep on helping in the education, helping in the capacity building. I think this is the most important one, especially that you have an emancipated society that can do it themselves.
Thank you. And I'm going to save the question, how can we help UN for Alexandra? So same question to you. How should we continue this conversation?
For me, I would say the most important to continue the conversation, because as long as Lilith said, it's very cynical, but as long as we have conversation happening, as long as people keep remembering that Ukraine is there still in the war, the help is coming also, because that's, as we see that as soon as Ukraine disappeared from the news, the help disappeared, and it also influenced the front line at the same time. So any conversation that is happening, it's still pretty much valuable, because there are still situations like that. Recently, I keep getting the questions like, oh, but what is going on in Ukraine? We don't have anything in the news. I was like, yeah, yesterday the apartment building from my sister the windows blew up because of rocket. Yeah. And yeah.
So attention, continue the conversation and keep focus on that, because with the loss of focus means loss of attention from the West.
Yeah.
And we have a very short attention span, and that also has impact on the contributions and financial contribution. So my question, the follow-up question will be, how can we help is make sure that we contribute. That will be...
Yeah, in this sense, it's informational attention, but if somebody wants to contribute professionally, it's always welcome with any kind of way and any kind of scale of involvement that people want to contribute. And I think you already heard all the topics that we brought up here.
Also the financial part, because to have a running organization, to have an impact, I think it's for Roskrit, it's for UN, but I think for all the organizations it's very important.
And then to go to the website, UN, what's the website?
UN.nu.
.nu, N-U. That's very important. And Roskrit, what's the website?
Rosquit.com, but Ros is with a 3 instead of a Z.
So RO3KVIT.com. It's on the screen. So it's very important to have addresses where you can go to, you can actually get information. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here tonight. And to end with you, Julia, how can we continue this conversation? How can we make sure that this continues? And what kind of topics we should talk about?
Well, I would say two things.
Yeah.
First is when we are thinking of creative solutions for Ukraine, keep in mind and keep the focus on how it can help Ukrainian economy.
Yeah.
So solutions like building something here and transporting it to Ukraine would be maybe interesting, but the revenues will stay in Europe. And we don't want to keep this story very long that funding for reconstruction should become from outside. Ukraine should be able to generate it also, at least partly itself. And the second point, it is really difficult to imagine how what the situation is and how it is and what the challenges Ukrainians are dealing with without actually going there. So once you feel it's safe enough, I would encourage people to at least, travel to the border or have conversations with Ukrainian displaced people who are staying here.
Second point, yeah.
Yeah, that was my second point, and I also wanted to say that so part of what we do at the Institute is also to stimulate debate, more on financial and governance part, and we'll be also organizing a conference, part of the conference at the next Ukraine Recovery Conference in Berlin. So if you have any interesting ideas or on that topic, you can reach out to me as well.
And what address can they reach out to you?
Well, it's a Klingendahl Institute website.
Just go to the Klingendahl Institute.nl and then you find everything. Thank you so much, Julia Soraciuk-Westerveld, Research Fellow EU and Global Affairs at Klingendahl Institute. Of course, Alexandra Tsekatchenko, an urban planner at Kuipers Compagnons. And Patrick Meijer, architect partner by Orange Architects. And Lilith Bredels, directeur van Archis, a member of the Urban Coalition for Ukraine. It says there in Dutch, sorry for that. Director of the Archis and member of the Urban Coalition for Ukraine. Can I have a big round of applause for these people? Thank you so much for sharing your stories. Also, thank you for the audience for sharing your stories. Thanks to Alex behind the technique. And of course, Sebastian and Pauline over there. Sebastian is the program maker for tonight. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And yeah, please applaud. We have many conversations going on here in Pakhuis de Zwijger. As I said earlier tonight, these programs can be found on dezwijger.nl. They're all free of charge. So please join us next time. And a lot of them are also in English, but also in Dutch when it comes to, for example, prefab housing. There's a program on that. Thank you so much and see you soon. Bye.